Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Onyx. On today's episode, I am joined by Tony Trietch. Tony is a well-known big buck killer from Michigan who always seems to kill the biggest muleys, whitetails, elk, whatever on his adventure hunts. We talk about how he got into western hunting, finding overlooked places to hunt, e-scouting for mule deer, pre-scouting, glassing strategies, and some pretty awesome stories from past hunts in the high country. The East Meets West Hunt podcast is brought to you by Onyx, and the Onyx Hunt app is your premier GPS hunting app that turns your phone into a working GPS. I'm using the Hunt app at home and in the field while scouting for mountain bucks in Pennsylvania. I'm marking places that I find and typing in the notes to help me for this upcoming fall. I always take a photo of the spot to add to my waypoint so that I can visualize it at a later date. If you want to check out the Onyx Hunt app for yourself, head over to onyxmaps.com and use the coupon code EMW to save yourself 20%. Tethered is a company that's founded on the principles of educating the hunting community on saddle hunting while creating the most innovative, lightweight, safe products. And I'm using the Phantom saddle system with the Predator platform for all of my mobile hunts. I actually got the Predator XL platform in the other day too, so I'm going to be messing around, see which one I like the most, which I had no issues with the regular Predator, but the bigger platform might be a little bit nicer. We'll see. So if you want to learn more about tethered and saddle hunting, head over to tetherednation.com. Maven is building the highest quality optics at half the price of their competitors through their direct-to-consumer business model. They want to create the best optics for the job, period. Their products are backed with a lifetime no-fault warranty and an incredible customer experience. I'm using the B2 9x45 binos on all of my western hunts. It is a low-light monster, allowing you to see through the binos longer than you can with your naked eye. You can use the coupon code eastmeetswest-gift for a free gift with any full-price optics order at mavenbuilt.com. And last but not least, Spartan Forge, as we require an accurate forecast of the best hunting days and the best hunting spots to save time on scouting and actually executing the hunts. The Spartan Forge outfitter utilizes years of military background and machine learning to pull from millions of data points to accurately predict deer movement, which includes GPS data, over 30 years of weather data, academic and state research. They're using science rather than someone's opinion to figure out the movement for your specific hunting area. You can use the code EastMeetsWest to save 25% off of the outfitter at SpartanForge.ai. On this week's Mountain Buck Story of the Week, or otherwise known as Mountain Buck Monday, over on social media, we have a story from Ryan Elders coming out of the mountains of western North Carolina. Ryan said, "I found this clear cut in September and scouted it until I found my ambush spot. And I walked back 3.6 miles numerous times knowing that I needed to trust my spot. On December the 7th, I walked in before daylight to find my sticks and stand were covered with ice. So I walked up the hill and sat down around 10 o'clock. Then the big 9-point came in and I shot him at 10 yards. It was a long haul out, but so worth it for this old, heavy-horned warrior." And once again, everyone just keeps sending in some awesome bucks and really great stories. So Ryan, congratulations. Head over to social media at East Meets West Hunt on Instagram or East Meets West Outdoors on Facebook and check out this buck that Ryan shot in western North Carolina last year. In other news, the Mountain Buck Scouting video series, the first episode of this season, is live on my YouTube channel, which is just Beau Martonik. This one all has to do with public land trail camera strategy for the big woods. So it's about an 18-minute video. I break down everything as far as my strategy and how I'm using that data to help me with the hunts, and how I'm breaking that down to a 3-year strategy. All those different types of things are all in this new video. So if you would, head over to my YouTube, check it out. If you like it, share it with your friends, family, anybody if you like it, and then definitely subscribe. give the video a thumbs up and a comment if you like it, of course. And there'll be some more coming out, not this week, but next week. I'll drop the next one. Every 2 weeks, I'll be releasing one of those videos until this season's done. So pretty excited about that. This past weekend, I was at the Tethered Teach and Train Tour down in southern West Virginia with the Untamed crew. So I was down there with those guys. I had Kirk on the podcast before, and I have another one coming out next week with Josh there. Stayed at Josh's house. Him and his family were so nice and open to having me stay there at their place, and the event turned out great. There were some of you listeners that were there. It was a lot of fun, a great event. The next one will be in Pennsylvania at Seven Springs for the Total Archery Challenge here in a couple weeks. So I'll be at that one as well. So be looking forward to that. If you head over to tetherednation.com, as I mentioned earlier, you can find all the information if the tour's coming near you. And just lastly, I'm awaiting draw results for Colorado as we speak. Hopefully, it's supposed to hit the credit cards here this week and be able to know if we drew or not. I'm confident in it, but I'm always like to see the tag in hand before I get too confident. But waiting on that, which leads right into this episode here with Tony Trietch, as he is an absolute killer. And I don't care if you're hunting whitetails, mule deer, elk, anything. You can learn a lot from this podcast and the way Tony just approaches it. And he's extremely driven, a guy that is truly, truly incredible. So I think that you'll enjoy this one and get a lot of great information out of it. So without further ado, let's talk with Tony. All right, we're live. Tony Trietch, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Beau.
Yeah, it's good to connect with you and get to talk to you a little bit. Been following along with your stuff and reading some of your writings and stuff through Rock Slide and everything for quite a while now. So it's good to get to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate being on the show. I enjoy your podcast, and I've picked up quite a bit from it. So I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I have guests that are good enough on to get you that information, because I know that's not coming from me. So
lots of good stuff. There's something in everybody's experience to pick from. So
yeah, no, that's cool. I one of the things that I didn't know until I was talking to you about getting this show is that you're from Michigan. I don't know why. I just assumed that you lived out west. And
I spend 3 to 4 months a year out there. That might be why. Yeah,
that might be why. When I see all the photos and videos and stuff that you post, I was like, he's got to live out there, and guess not.
No. I live in northern Michigan and just spend the entire fall out in the mountains. And now this spring I'm going to be going out for my first bear hunt, and I haven't hunted bears since 2009, so this will be the first time in quite a while. But yeah,
nice.
More road trips.
How long are you going out for that bear hunt?
It's all up in the air. Matter of fact, the date we're going is still up in the air. We're waiting for the grass to kind of green up where we're going, and my buddies that invited me out are just watching it and waiting. So
yeah,
could be a few weeks, could be next week. My schedule stays flexible, so when they call, I'll jump in the truck and I'll be there the next day. So
oh, that's awesome. And I've always wanted to hunt spring bear, and it's been something that every year I'm like, I want to make that happen. Nice break in the spring. I just haven't been able to justify the vacation time from work at this point to want to do it. So I was like, I could cut a week off my mule deer hunt, or I'm like, no, I'm just gonna.
I wouldn't do that either.
I've got used to. I think it was in 2018 I started spending at least 2 weeks out west, and I don't know if I could go back to trying to do it in a week. Like, it just feels so rushed and it's difficult.
If I only spent 2 weeks out there, I would come back home and pack everything up and just turn around and go back. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
And I had that feeling when I was young too. Like I told you earlier, I grew up ski racing, and I mean, so the mountains called to me. I'm stuck in the Midwest, racing on icy slopes, and I see all these guys out west skiing in powder. I'm like, I need to be out there. And the only thing that held me back was my mother was terminally ill for a long time, and I didn't want to leave her side. And so I stayed here, went to college, and started a business. And now my business keeps me here. Otherwise, I would have been gone a long time. It's even before I was hunting in the mountains, it drew to me. And so it's something about it.
Yeah. So you started your business, and you were telling me before we started recording as a home builder. You started that like relatively early on.
Well, yeah, right out of college, graduated with a business degree. Didn't want to have anything to do with doing business, and I literally spent so much time, and I wasn't a good student in high school. I was a good student in college, but I had enough. Like I was like, I need to just get outside, because I grew up trimming Christmas trees, and then I worked on the ski hills, and then I worked on the charter boats fishing. I literally have never had a job inside. So being in college for that time, it was just too much indoor time. I needed to get out. And so I got a job as a carpenter. My grandpa was a carpenter, and my dad does not use tools. We try to keep sharp things away from him. He just doesn't build anything. So I was like, screw it. I'm gonna try to be a carpenter. And I answered an ad in the paper, showed up on the job site the next morning. The guy hired me right over the phone. Got there at the time he said they start, and there's nobody there. It's a $500,000 job. Nowadays it'd be a $2 million job. And half hour after starting time, guys start to roll in. Boss didn't even show up till noon. There's a brand new SkyTrack there. There's a trailer full of $50,000 in tools, and there's this big, beautiful home overlooking Lake Michigan. I'm like, these guys are all idiots. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be great. And luckily, I did have I discovered that I had skills working with my hands with wood, which is important too, because you can have all the business mind. It doesn't matter, but it's worked out great, and got a great lead carpenter working over me that taught me not just how to do it, but how to run guys, how to make money at it. And then when I finally left him, he taught me how to bid things and how to price things. And it was a smooth transition, but I think I started when I was 26 on my own, and I'm 46 now. So 20 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said it's been keeping you busy here recently.
Too busy. Yeah. Right now it's silly. Like the building materials are so expensive. I don't even understand how these people just keep coming to us and just throwing money at us. Just build. So I just keep my fingers crossed that we don't hit a wall here and everybody just kind of disappears, because it's almost too good to be true. But the hardest part, the only trouble we have right now is just finding employees. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? It seems like it's like that across the board, and especially in trades, trying to find people with that. I mean, better than I do, but even in manufacturing where I work, it's like trying to find people it can be really difficult. That's, we have the work. It's just like trying to find people that want to come in, show up, and actually work.
And I've been in the area long enough. I had a good reputation. I had a lot of great guys. Like I had a group of, I look back now, I had like the super crew. I had like 12 guys. I think 8 of them had their own builder's license and worked for themselves at some point, but they just didn't want to deal with the headaches of it. So they worked for me. And that was like up till 2017. And then once things really just blew up and started going fast, well, they went back out on their own. And I had to start basically back from scratch. I think I have one guy that stayed with me from that group, and we're slowly building back. But I mean, until times slow down a little bit and I'm the only one busy, I'm never going to see those guys back again. I mean, so hopefully someday they'll come back.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. So when you were young and growing up and doing this kind of stuff, were you into hunting at that point too? Oh yeah. Yeah. My dad had me sitting in tree stands with him when I was 8, and you can't hunt in Michigan until you're 12. So I shot a million deer with my imagination, sitting, on a limb below his stand. And by the time I was 12 and I could buy my own license, he bought me a license. I don't think I had a Michigan deer tag I didn't fill, and there might have been a little party hunting in there too that I was helping mom fill her tags. And I'm sure the
that's past. I can say that now, but I mean, I was not picky. I would shoot every single deer that came through, and it wasn't until I was probably early 20s that a buddy of mine asked me. Matter of fact, I was probably about 25, 24, and he asked me to go out of state hunting, and I'd never thought about it. And he started showing me pictures of what they were killing, and it's just like, I've never seen a deer like that. I've never seen a deer that big. You know, in northern Michigan, it's hard to see a 2-year-old. Back then, to see a 2-year-old buck was rare because everybody shot first thing with antlers. If it had a 3-inch antler on one side, it was going down. And it's different here now. Now if you work here, you can shoot, 125-inch buck every year or close to that. But my buddy showed me them pictures, and I'm like, let's do this. And that evolved into hunting Iowa, Ohio, Illinois, and Kansas whenever, eventually a couple years down the road. But we'd go down and we'd sleep in a farmer's barn in Illinois, and then go to Ohio and in Iowa every few years when we draw. And I did that up until it's probably close to 9 years ago now. When I think what it was I was in Kansas, and I started seeing these big mule deer bucks that I couldn't shoot because I didn't have either species tag. And when you're there for 2 weeks and you're a week and a half and you're watching these giant mule deer, push does around, no one's hunting them because everybody's hunting whitetails. And I was like, I want to hunt one of these things. So that that next year I started looking around and went to Colorado and I jumped right in, feed first. And I think that first year I went out west, I hunted Montana and Colorado, and maybe that was just it. Maybe just the 2 states, but I got my first elk and I got, a great mule deer, and I was hooked. I literally have not hunted from a tree stand since that day.
Really?
Even when I hunt now, and my whitetails have gotten way bigger and better since I've gotten out of that tree stand too, I'll add. But it's not in Iowa or Ohio or Illinois anymore. The last buck I killed in Illinois was 165-inch buck. He's right behind me. My best Illinois buck I've ever shot. And then I literally never hunted from a tree stand after that.
Really? I didn't know that. That's incredible.
All coming around. Well, because I'm hunting in eastern Montana and Kansas for the most part for my whitetails. So
okay.
It's wide open. Even if there are trees there to hang, that's not where the deer are. So it doesn't make sense. You handicap yourself by sitting in a tree stand.
So you don't hunt in Michigan anymore?
I set probably 20 trail cameras a year on properties that I can hunt around here. And I have not killed a buck here since 2013. And he's my best Michigan buck. He's like 137 inches. I literally saw him along my driveway coming home from Kansas in 2013. I hadn't seen my girlfriend at the time in, 10 days, two weeks, something like that. And I'm driving down the driveway and I see him pushing a doe along, on my property. And I got home and I was coming from a hunt where, I was chasing giant bucks, but I didn't even get to say hello. As I grabbed my gear, I rushed out of the truck. I'd been in the truck for 16 hours and I snuck down the driveway, and he'd already gotten across the road, but he was standing in the neighbor's property, like watching their kids play in the backyard. They turned around, came right back, and I killed him on my property. That was the last buck I've shot in Michigan.
Really?
I had high hopes this year because last year I found a set of sheds in my backyard. I piled up all the landscaping brush in a pile, and they just love it. And I found a match set, but I never, he's probably 110 inches last year, but I never saw a picture of him. So someone probably shot him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough to find a buck that gets me going here now. I'm spoiled.
Yeah. Are you pretty close to the national forests and stuff that's up there in northern Michigan?
There's a lot of public land up here.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
The Sleeping Bear Sand Dunes, you've got the Manistee National Forest, you've got the Huron National Forest. There's a ton of public land. I haven't hunted it in years, but I grew up, my, pre-high school years, I lived literally right across the road from it, and no one hunted it. I mean, I shouldn't say no one hunted it back then. My dad and my uncles did and stuff, but they'd never, I'm sure it gets hunted harder now, but I know there are still some spots around here that, there's some big chunks of property.
Yeah, that's everyone always compares Michigan and Pennsylvania as being similar. Like same thing with Pennsylvania used to be the same way with anybody shooting this first buck that came by, and then
Mhm.
antler restrictions came in here, and now they're starting to get some
Yeah.
older deer and some bigger deer and stuff in there, and it seems like the hunting tradition is pretty similar as well, from Michigan to Pennsylvania. But I didn't know that it was only 9 years ago you started going out west.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I
Well,
went from the
for
Midwest.
for mule deer and elk, yeah.
Yeah. I think I'd have to look at the calendar. I think it was, yeah, I think it was 2012.
Man, that's crazy. So what? So once you started hunting the mountains for mule deer, just well, you said you loved the mountains already from skiing and everything, but you just became hooked on it at that point, or?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the first hunt I had was in Colorado in the high country, and that late August, last Saturday in August start, and I think I got there 5 days early, and I mean, I found 4 or 5 bucks over 170, right away. I mean, you're hiking up into these big, beautiful, green, luscious basins with flowers that come up to your knees, and it's just there's water everywhere. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I didn't really run into too many hunters back. You do now, but it's changed a little bit. But it was just, it was like heaven. It's just, and I think that the way I hunt is very, I'm kind of suited for spot and stalk. Like I've been restless my whole life. Like I don't do well on a stand. I'm fidgety and I move. But if you put me in a spot where I can see my target and I can move in on it, and there was a high rate of success rate from the very beginning, and it was, yeah, hooked. To say I was hooked from the start would be the biggest understatement. I was head over heels in love with it, and I can't see. I dread the year that comes when my body finally says, no, you're not gonna climb up there. Maybe with horses, but
Yeah.
I really dread that time. So.
So when you started doing it, did you start backpack hunting right away, or were you hiking in from the truck, or?
Yep. And that was my intro to rock slide too in 2012. It's like I need to figure out how to do this. Where do I
Yeah.
go? And I was a longtime member on Archery Talk, and Aaron Snyder used to be on Archery Talk all the time in the Western hunting category. Like there's a little sub category, yeah, for Western hunting, and I think I saw somewhere he must have mentioned rock slide, and I went on there, and even back then you could glean enough information off there to do everything. And I'm not saying where to go, but how to do it and what gear you would need. There were guys. I think Colin McConnell. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. Had a spreadsheet that he just publicly shared with everybody. It's like, this is everything I take, and here's how much it weighs. Here are items I take off when it's not raining. And it was just like, holy cow! Like, these are all the things you need. And we went camping and stuff a lot when I was a kid, so I was used to being in a tent. But throwing 50 pounds in your backpack and hiking in was new, but other than the altitude and getting used to that, it was a pretty seamless fit.
Yeah, it's amazing. I feel like anybody that starts out always ends up on rock slide. I mean, the same thing that I did. I read way too much probably at the beginning and overthought it from the gear standpoint and everything else. But at the same time, it definitely helped me, reduce that learning curve ridiculously as I move forward with it.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to go on there and find, if you go on, it's like any of the other sites. If you go on there and ask where to hunt, you're going to get the same responses. Yeah. But if you go on there and say, hey, how are you doing this? You're going to have a lot of people trying to help you that are genuinely, they want you to succeed.
Yeah. And now, do you still write for them as far as for the gear side of things? I remember just a couple months ago seeing an article that you had on there.
Yeah, it varies. Some years I'll have too many tags and I don't really have that much time, and I'll just do a couple of reviews. But I usually do between 3 and 6 gear reviews a year, and then there's some. I've got some new stuff in the works for this fall that I'm not quite yet ready to share, but there'll be something I'm releasing on Rock Slide this fall. Let's just say.
Oh, geez. All right.
And not a gear review.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it there. And when do you plan on releasing this information?
It'll depend on editing, but it should be, December, January timeframe.
Okay. All right. So we got a little bit of time yet still,
Yeah.
but
Right.
that's cool. Do you write for any other places or just Rock Slide exclusively?
Well, yeah, definitely not exclusive to Rock Slide. That was one of the first things I told them when they approached me, but because I had already been in Western Hunter and Eastman's at that point, and I just wanted to keep those avenues open.
Yeah.
And I've had other people that I've written for that, but most of the stuff, if I'm writing something, it's either going to be on Rock Slide, Western Hunter, or Eastman's.
Okay. Nice. So you had mentioned with going to Colorado and going there like 5 days early or so to kind of scout and get used to it. Is that so? I mean, I know that you spend a ton of time out there, but do you find that that's more beneficial than say if a guy had a week or 2 weeks to go out there, spending that 2 weeks actually hunting or going out at the beginning of the season a few days ahead and scouting, leading up to it?
If it's the early archery, I would say at least throw yourself 2 or 3 days of scout. If you do 5, that's great, and break it up. Now, the later hunts, once you get, I think the muzzleloader too. I treat the muzzleloader the same, just because it's only a couple days into the season. But if you are going for a second, third, or fourth rifle tag, maybe just a day or two to scout, because those deer are moving so much then that, especially the third and the fourth, that it's it's rut, and there you might see a deer one day and the next day you never get, he's gone, you never see him again. So
Okay.
it just depends on the type of hunt, and I don't suggest that with elk. I mean, a day or two for elk is usually, if you know the area. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of tough. If it's your first time for elk, you might want to throw that extra time in there, because you might hunt 5-7 days and not see an elk.
Yeah.
But once you find them, and it kind of clicks, like, okay, this is the stuff they like. This is areas I got to look. Then they're easier to find and they're more transient. So I just don't think scouting them is as useful as it is for the deer.
Yeah. I was going back and forth next. I've never hunted mule deer before, and this year I'm planning on it. I think I'm going to draw a Colorado tag. I'm pretty confident in it because I'm shooting for a little bit lower point unit than what I have, just kind of assuming that there might be some bit of a creep or more people that are applying. But with that being said, we were going back and forth. There's 3 of us, and we're like, do we want to go out early and scout, which is what my hunting partners have hunted mule deer in the high country in the past, and that's what they did before, and said it was, awesome. Last year, my cousin was in Utah, and he said they spotted 17 bucks the day before the season, and then all of a sudden, opening morning, they said it was like just headlamps coming across the mountains, coming in, and everything changed. But I don't think Colorado's that bad as far as, I hope not.
What I saw last year in Colorado was that bad, and I'd never seen it that bad before. The same unit, I hunted the same unit last year that I hunted in 2018, and I never saw another hunter. Well, I shouldn't say that. I saw another hunter, but he was in another unit, and he pushed my buck to me. I was basically waiting. I had bumped my buck, and he went to another unit. I sat there, I think, for 4 days and waited for him to come back. And I don't know if he would have came back if this other hunter wouldn't have bumped him. But this year, I had the same unit, and I bet you I saw 10 to 15 people a day.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I had the opening morning to kill my buck that I had scouted, and I was on, and I literally got up at 2 a.m. to hike. I didn't camp up there because I didn't want to draw any attention to it. So I got up to hiked in and around to get above them. Right at daylight's breaking, I peek over, and they're feeding the same spot they've been feeding all week, and they're moving to their bedding area. So I backed off, snuck around to basically behind their bedding spot, peeked over, and there was 2 guys coming up through the basin, just They weren't. It didn't look like they were sneaking in on those bucks. I think they were just hiking through it to get to actually the other unit on the other side. And I searched until the muzzleloader hunt started for those bucks and never turned them up again.
Really?
Matter of fact, I had 5 or 6 bucks within 5 miles of me over 180, and I never saw a single one of them again.
Do you think they were mule deer hunting or elk hunting?
The guys that bumped them, elk hunting.
Okay.
I'm almost positive.
Yeah. I've tried not to give too much information away where I'm going, but I did pick a unit that has draw elk tags to try to limit that a little bit, because when I hunted Colorado for elk, and the last year was 2018, I hunted there. I was like, I really don't want to go back again unless I absolutely have to, at least for elk, and an over-the-counter unit. But that's definitely something that's kind of scary with it. But also that's why, again, too, with wanting to go earlier, we wanted to get there before muzzleloader came in, and early rifle in some places, and everything else, and with the season starting later now too, again, I don't know much about this, but even talking to Brian Barney and stuff, worrying about them kind of moving down to more middle elevations and stuff, and into the timber, that is kind of a concern.
That later archery date is not helping us in Colorado. It's helping the elk hunters because they get later time in September, but it's not good. And it is what it is. I mean, you got to deal with it, but it's definitely going to make it tougher.
Yeah, for the next 4 years at least. That's what the management plan was, 5 years, I think, for those dates. And so yeah, that'll be interesting. And just kind of seeing the way the dates were for the rifle seasons and stuff, I was like, I'm going to burn my points in Colorado now and try. And the way the strategy I kind of had with it, which wasn't my plan going into it, was I wanted to hunt a unit that doesn't take a whole lot to draw, but enough that I can hunt it every couple of years if I wanted to and learn the unit a little bit. I don't know. That was just kind of my thought process with it.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I try to hunt it every year, so I end up hunting a 0-point unit at least every other year, and then I've picked up tags on the second choice. I've picked up I've bought one lantern voucher in my there, and any way I can get to hunt Colorado every year. It's definitely a state that I will not skip.
Yeah, and do you and you've had quite a bit of success with elk in Colorado as well, right?
Oh yeah, yep. It's been. I shot my first elk there, and I think I've the only elk tag I think I've ever had I think I've had 2 that I didn't punch, and one was a year I had a moose tag in Idaho, so I didn't really give it a whole lot of time. And then last year, and I was being really picky too. I had I was in an OTC unit, and it was, there was 2 bulls, both of them were over 330, and I was on them every day and just couldn't pull it off. And I had lots of other bulls I could have shot at point blank range, but I was holding out for them, and it didn't work.
Oh, that's awesome. And it does give you a little bit of hope. Like I said, I was disgusted the last time that I was there. I mean, when I was being a little bit strong when I said I'd never go back, but it was just, the one point I had some friends with horses, and we, the first part of the hunt, the first 7 days I was with my dad, and we hunted a spot that I'd hunted years in the past, and it was just flooded with people. And then I went in with my buddies that had horses, and we went back in like 9 miles into this wilderness area, and there was just outfitter tents, and then there was other people that took llamas back in, and it felt like everywhere we went was just, filled with people, and made it difficult. But that's the name of the game that we have now, and just gotta deal with it and figure it out.
It's getting the further so when I started going out west, if you went in that far, you didn't see as many people. And I think it's such a craze now of going in deep and just trying to outwork everybody, that sometimes you just got to hunt smarter. And a lot of the animals I'm finding aren't way in. They're maybe a few miles, or less. So
interesting. It's And I found that with elk, like when 2019, I changed my strategy. I didn't even backpack hunt. I just hunted from the truck and in a spot that you couldn't get back in from the way that the mountain range was and the border and all this other stuff with units. And what I found was people were just basically the locals would road hunt it, and they'd drive up and down glass from their vehicles, and all the backpack hunters went to these wilderness areas and stuff and wanted to get in real deep and kind of had a sweet spot within 2 to 3 miles from the truck. And we had an awesome hunt there for 14 days, and I ended up killing mine on the first day, but all my buddies, we were in bulls every single day by, doing that. And do you take that similar strategy for mule deer as well? Like as far as not going as far as maybe you used to?
I'm much pickier with mule deer than I am with elk. I mean, I was being pretty picky with elk too, but, so I give myself a lot more time to scout the mule deer. And then when I do, it's a lot of miles, and that's when I'm putting on, the backpack gets a lot more use then, and depending on where I find them, if I find them 6-7 miles from the truck, then that's where I'm going to live. The bucks I found this year were directly above a trailhead, straight up, but you couldn't see them from any of the trails that led from that trailhead. You had to literally like bushwhack down a canyon, then back up the other side, almost vertical face to look across into this tiny little cut that they were just living in. And how those guys, why they chose to walk up there opening morning is beyond me. I think they must have just been new and thought they had a shortcut to get over that mountain. I'm sure they were regretting it. And when I saw their heads peek over and bust my deer, I regretted it too. But but there was 20 cars below 600 yards from those bucks. And
really.
Oh yeah, and one was way over, well over 200 inches. So, but they figure out spots where people don't bother them. Elk are even better at it, I think. And that's why, you find those secret little spots that they're just a few miles off, and that everybody's walking around or walking past or overlooking. Those are the spots that you got to keep tight to your chest and. Yeah, they're gonna produce again.
Yeah, no, they found their security spot there, and they're able to hang out, and you even see that with whitetails sometimes too. There's for a few years there, I was just like really trying to find the oldest, biggest deer, and I was finding spots in Pennsylvania where I was getting back in 4 miles or so, which is incredible here to do that. And I wasn't finding any better bucks than I was in some of these spots that were just not at the end of the road, sort of deal that would be within even a mile from the truck. And it was just kind of a learning thing for me. It's not necessarily always how far, it's, wherever they have that security.
Yep.
But
yeah, and that security can come in a lot of different ways, either by being a spot that people don't see you in, or maybe a chunk of private, or just something that's just so nasty that everybody just looks at it and says, I don't know how I'd even kill him.
Yeah.
I don't know how I can get there. So
that's interesting. And you do some scouting trips out there too. Like you were telling me, I don't remember if we were talking about it on here, or beforehand, about flying out to in the summertime to do some scouting. Is that something that's pretty regular for you?
I've only flown once. Usually I drive. I love having all my tools with me.
Yeah.
But usually I just leave before the season. So I'll give it, like last year I drew a Nevada deer tag, burned a bunch of points on, and I think I left probably about 10 days before it started, so that after the drive time, 'cause that's 33 hours drive for me, I still had 8 days, and the unit was so remote that just taking a day to go get cleaned up and get laundry burned an entire day, maybe a day and a quarter, because it was just such a long drive. But I always try to give myself, especially a new unit, try to give myself plenty of time to get there beforehand and scout, and as much as possible. So if work lines up for me, and I've built my business to run like this. Like everybody that I work for knows, and I work, I'm a subcontractor. So my company basically provides carpentry labor. So I work for other builders, and I've been in town long enough that I can do it for the best builders. That I come in and mesh with their people when they need more people. So when I leave, their people are running my people. and I just can back away, and all I got to do is come out and do payroll and invoicing and occasionally deal with an issue, but there's not much. So it works well, and I've built it that way so that I can do this. So,
those are things I wish I would have learned in high school when they were telling me,
not too late.
No,
not too late.
You're right. It's never too late, but I've heard this a lot from other hunters that I've got to know that get a lot of time to hunt, and they've built their businesses around making that time, and I think that's awesome. I think it's cool that you're able to do that. And so, yeah, it's interesting. So like, when we were planning on going out this year, we're going to go out about 5 days before the season starts. And we're going to take a day, probably 2 days, just to acclimate, because my one buddy had altitude sickness really bad, was in the hospital before. And
Wow.
yeah, he almost died. It was really bad. And so we're taking our time with it, and then going to get up a few days, plan on a few days ahead of time and scout and do, a little bit of that to try to put ourselves in a better spot. Cause none of us have been to this unit before, and it's just, kind of brand new. So want to spend that time. Do you spend, while you're at home or at work, I guess you could say, doing your bidding and you're doing stuff on your computer, do you e-scout at all?
Oh my God. I think if Go Hunt could keep track of like who uses their stuff more in Google Earth and Onyx, I think I'm in the top 10%. I guarantee that. I know there are other guys that kind of freak out about it like I do, but yeah, I mean, I'm a morning guy, so like we talked before. So I'm up at 4:30 every day, and when the coffee's there, after I go through my emails and all the work stuff, I'm going through every state that I'll hunt that year, or that I hope to hunt. Even I've scouted in states that I've never drawn a tag in, so or at least not that tag. And yeah, no, I spend a ton of time looking at stuff. I'm not gonna say I'm the best at looking at an aerial map and saying this is gonna be great. I think where I get my advantage from it, because I blank out all the time when I try to predict, like, okay, this is where they're going to be. Once you get there, it never pans out for me. For deer, anyways. Elk are a little bit different because they need water more. But where I think my advantage from the e-scouting comes from is just spending so many hours looking at the areas where like once I draw a tag, if it's new, like I'm just tunnel vision on that unit, and I literally have just a sense of like where all the roads at, where do all the drainages come from and lead to, and where all the water, mostly water sources, and where are the trails, and it just gives you references to the unit itself, not necessarily the animals. And from there, you can apply your skills to try to figure out where they're at.
When you're doing that scouting, are you finding like a bunch of areas and backup areas and stuff as far as like part of that plan? So like, as you say, when you go out scouting, that you're just like boom, 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 hitting all these spots, checking them out.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to zoom back out very far before this whole screen would be red over my hunting unit, because it's just covered with icons. But and I spend more time like that during that scouting period deleting icons than I do like writing in something like great buck or 2 good bucks, whatever. That's the rare part. Most of the time it's no, delete. And you just move on to the next and keep rolling until you find what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had figured that you had done you do a bunch of e-scouting just based off of the amount of time you're going to spend out there, and not being able to be within close driving proximity, which is pretty relative to anyone listening, and myself too, and it makes sense now too why when you had sent me a message about my podcast with Mark Livesey, that he obviously geeks out on it pretty hard too.
He's got I still haven't signed up for his course. I need to. I know if I do, I'm not going to get anything else done, because that's all I'll be doing.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's good. Like he has that game dialed.
Yeah,
but I think my biggest advantage is it's time. Like I said, I built my business around being able to leave for 3 or 4 months straight. And when I say that, I don't mean like come back home between hunts. I don't come home for 3 or 4 months. I'm gone the entire time, living out of my truck or a backpack. So, and I'm very picky. So I get to Colorado or one of these states, like Nevada last year. and it wasn't a terrible amount of points. I burned 8 points. So, but for me, that's the most points I've ever burned because I like to just hunt as often as possible. I scouted for 10 days and then I hunted for 18 every single day. And I found a couple bucks that I would have shot. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. Brian Barney found it for me. And they were hunting Dan's elk tag. And then he's like, we met up that afternoon. He's like, hey, we just found what you're looking for. And
Really?
yeah, but he was living above a bunch of domestic sheep, and the sheep herder's dog would blow the deer out every time I'd sneak in there. It was a horrible situation. That's why those bucks were there. But anyways, what I was getting at was I learned those units because I'm in there so much. Because you can't, I get there early to scout. I'm super picky, so I'm looking over hundreds and hundreds of bucks before I find something I want to shoot, and I have time on my side. I can wait, and so you take that now to another unit, like in Colorado. I've got a cluster of different units that I hunt every in rotation, whatever. I know those units really well, even though I don't live out there and I don't get to do a bunch of summer scouting. You take guys that live out there, unless they're Brian Barney or someone that is like doing it, in their backyard all the time. I'm literally spending more time up on those mountains following those animals than the people that live there, because I got nowhere else to go. They're coming out and going to their jobs. I'm hunting like 2-day weekends or even long weekends or whatever. I'm just living up here in the mountains. So that's one of my advantages.
Yeah, no, that's how from just like the mental side of it, of being able to stay out there that long and stuff. Did that take a little bit to get used to, or is that just something that you just think you're just bred into? Like,
not at all. And I laughed my ass off listening to people on other podcasts talk about the mental part of, being alone. I'm like, God, I look forward to it all year. That's all I want. I love my wife and I love my employees, but no, I have zero problem being alone for 4 months straight. And you come out every few handful of days, do laundry and meet people. And I have friends in all these states now, I've met along the way. I have guys that, they'll take my freezers, it's like a little flatbed with freezers along the way. And I'll basically leave a trail of freezers with meat and heads in them and then pick them all back up on the way back through. So I see people, but no, I am completely built to be a solo hunter. Like I won't say I don't hunt well with others, because I've actually last just a few years I've made a friend in Wyoming that we make a point now to hunt every year together, and I have a blast. But I have no problem being alone, and I am a much more efficient killer when I'm alone.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess when you're alone too on those hunts, like I've never done a solo hunt out west. I've done where like I'll hunt by myself, but I'm always, kind of coming back to a group of people. But in those situations where you're by yourself, you make the decisions faster because you're not having to bounce it off anybody. It's just you, and whether it's your mistake or it's your success, you own that, from beginning to end.
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't always work out. That quick decision making and that I'm just going to do it doesn't always pan out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does. So yeah, it's.
Oh, that's so cool. Like, so back a little bit to the e-scouting part, like so when you are marking all these points, are you looking for areas that the deer are living in? You trying to find glassing points? Like what exactly are you focusing on for that?
Well, you can look at big, lush basins and think, okay, well, the deer might be there, but it isn't going to matter if you can't find a spot where you can see them from. And then once you do find them from that spot, how can you get to where they are without them seeing you so that you can get in a position to kill them? And this goes back to when I was younger, I leased some property in southern Illinois, and the guy I leased it from was a pretty good hunter. He was one of the first guys that I ever met that killed a lot of big deer. And I asked him about his tree stand placements, and he told me, it doesn't matter how good the tree stand looks or how close it is to a great trail. If the wind swirls in there, or if there's just a list of so many different things, but what it comes down to is, can you kill what you're trying to kill from that spot? And it's the same exact thing in the mountains. There's lots of great spots where, the wind's always swirls, or there's only one way in or out of this chute, and they're going to see it. You have to look at every spot as, can I kill something there? So number one, I look for glassing spots overlooking those nice looking areas, or as much, or just as much terrain as possible. And then from there, I look for like, how do I, and this isn't necessarily using trails, a lot of times it's off trail, but how I can traverse the area the most efficiently to glass it in my scouting. Because most of my attention to the e-scouting isn't for killing the deer, it's for scouting the deer. Because I'm not just going to shoot a buck, I'm going to find something special and then kill him. And so I'm going to look for those big glassy knobs, or even secluded glassy knobs. Like last year, the buck I found, I mean, I was on the side of a mountain on a cliff, basically trying not to slide off, looking across the big canyon to a spot no one else could see, because that's the only spot you can see it from. So those weird little spots to look into little nooks and crannies, but then also ridge lines or areas you can traverse through with a minimal amount of loss and gain of elevation and not being cliffed out. So you can cover ground, maybe look on both sides, and it's just a matter of basin, footsteps and basins. I mean, if you really want to find something great, you're going to have to put a lot of miles on your legs probably, and I'll cover a lot of ground. So doing that the most efficiently, I guess, is the way I look at it.
Yeah. So you're trying to find probably like, a bunch of different areas that you can hit by running a certain ridge line or something, instead of having to go up and down to hit some of these different places and wear yourself out.
But sometimes those are the easy spots to run, and those are the spots everybody runs. So the only way to find the good ones is to get your butt in the nasty stuff. And you might have to hike a half a day to get to one little spot where you can only see one little area, but that's the only spot you can see that area from.
And do you do that like from Google Earth or whatever, like put it down in the view to try to be able to like...
Those spots are hard to find. Those spots are hard to find on Google Earth. I have not been good at that. I'm sure someone like Mark, who is just like an expert at looking at this stuff, could. I'm always fooled when I get there and it's like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm looking around thinking, am I in the right unit? Like, this isn't even looking. So more often than not, I stumble upon those little spots, or I'll see, I'll see a little spot when I can't see in there. And then I try to figure out how can I see in there? And then you end up like, oh God, I got to walk through that and get over there and try not to slide off the mountain in order to see in there. So just kind of happens.
Yeah. I was going to say that's one of the things that I've been like, I know I need to learn more as far as like, I remember the first time I went to Colorado and I marked these spots like, oh, we could glass from there and we could do this. And then I get there and I'm like, there's no way that I can get like, it's just a cliff, and it's so deceiving looking at it online versus and Mark has some tricks that I've been using to help where you can change Google Earth to like put it at 1.5 or 2 times what the steepness that it actually is, that it shows on the map, so you can kind of get a better real-time view of it. Yeah, it's
I gotta take that class.
Yeah. Oh, it was super helpful information. I haven't even finished. His class is so long, but it's so good. Like, and I don't want to just like put a couple minutes into it. Normally, like, I've taken some online courses for things that like I can spend 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there and get information. Well, his is like, you almost need to have a screen off to the side where you're working on your own thing, like trying to practice it while he's telling you it. And it's a in-depth process, but,
that's why I haven't subscribed. I'm scared I won't get anything done at work.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. But no, that's interesting as far as like, finding those glassing spots that are probably more identifiable, but then also being able to identify those the ones that aren't as easily identifiable from a map or from home or whatever. So that's interesting. But, and so the other thing is like, I heard a story of, a buddy of mine, you may know him, Clint Casper. I don't know if you ever talked to Clint. So him and I are really good friends, and his story from 2019 is Colorado Mule Deer, where he got cliffed out trying to come out and everything, and just like that's a real concern as far as like trying to being able to figure out how to navigate those areas. And what you mentioned earlier made me think of it when you were like bucks that are actually huntable or killable, from that standpoint.
Clint actually reached out to me before he killed that buck that spring before he applied there, and someone had told, I think Brian had told him that I had hunted there, and I helped him a little bit, and I'm still trying to figure out how he got himself in that much trouble, get caught cliffed out, but he's lucky he found those people to help him get that deer out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. When he called me when he was walking out, and I'd never heard he just sounded scared, like once he finally got cell service, because he knew my brother lived in Colorado, and he's like, "Hey, is your brother available to come help me?" And he was like, just sounded bad. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" Because he's the most like joyful person in the world.
Yeah, he's always so happy.
And he's like, "No, I'm not okay." And he told me the story, and I was just like, man. And then he ran into some rock climber at a bar or something that ended up helping him get it out.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing to mess with. Yeah, there's been lots of times where I've had a good angle on a deer, and I'm working in, and this is a done deal. All I got to do is get to that spot above him, and I have to turn around. Like I'm like, you're traversing across, and all of a sudden it starts sliding, and it's not just like your feet are sliding down. The whole thing is like a rock avalanche of little teeny shale is sliding down, and then it goes off a vertical cliff below that. And it's like, I can't die here, so I gotta find a different spot or wait. And that's happened. I bet that happens at least once every year. I mean, you got to be careful, and being alone, I can't push things. So, when that stuff starts happening, I gotta be smart and back off and figure out a different way.
Even when there's a 200-incher down below you gotta get your mind right. Yeah. Find another one. Oh, that's funny. So when I was scrolling through some of your Instagram posts, it looked like maybe you even have a better story, but this one seemed to stick in my head just from your post was your 2019 Colorado deer. And I just want to hear the story about that hunt, just how it happened. So if you wouldn't mind sharing it.
Sure. No, I had never hunted the unit before. So I got there probably 7-8 days to scout. This was still before they changed the date. So it was, I was there like mid-August pretty much, or maybe the beginning of the third week of August. And I covered a lot of ground, and it's a unit where you can find big bucks down low and up high. It's not and I'm good at being, how do you want to say it? Like I don't know everything. So I'm asking people about this unit, and I asked everybody that I thought might know something about it. And the majority of the people that I talked to, I bet if I talked to 15 people, I bet you 13 of them told me to stay down low and hunt the rolling, lower hills and sage country. And I scouted, and I spent the majority of my time scouting it, and I just couldn't find the deer that I wanted. And so I turned my attention to the top, and first day in, I found, what I ended up eventually killing, just absolute giant, and with a bunch of other bucks too. But I had to cover, I think that day I walked 17 miles, and they were the only group of bucks that I found on that day. And so I logged them away, and then I spent the next, handful of days up until the season, looking for, just a plan B, plan C. And I found a couple, but it wasn't much. And I actually had to leave before season to get fuel and food. And also I wanted to, I had talked to the DNR, the CO, I guess out there you call him, before the season started, and just asked him some questions. And I actually filmed a helicopter harassing a large group of elk, like pushing about 500 cows and calves across this giant basin, just hovering right over top of them. And so I videoed the whole thing. I was set up with the spotting scope, digiscoping some like 170, 180 bucks. And this helicopter came over and did this. So I wanted to get that footage to him because it was very clear. This helicopter was very clearly marked with a big painting and stuff. So I found him, going out, found him, showed him that. And, he's like, I'll be headed to the airport in a second. And so then since I shared that to him, he kind of opened up to me. He's like, so what have you found so far? And I told him exactly. I said, well, I haven't found squat down in the sage, but I found a really good buck up high. And he's like, you got a picture? And I showed him, and he just kind of nodded like, yep. I wouldn't look any further. It's like, I don't know if another, I know of him. I knew of him in there, and I haven't seen a better one in a few years. So So that was a couple days before season. I went back in all fueled up and hiked back in to see him. Still, I think it was 3 days before the season still. And what I was trying to find now was how to get above him, because there was no trail to the top of this mountain. There's trails that come about halfway up on two different sides, but there's I shouldn't say it. There's a trail walking up, but it's right through his basin, and that's the only one. Yeah, so I bushwhacked up there a couple different ways and just killed myself. But on one of those trips, I'm sitting there watching him, and I found him, and I basically found him about 3 or 4 different spots where he'd bed. He'd bed in a different spot. He would never bed in the same spot twice, or 2 days in a row, I should say. He'd always change it up, and they had like a little routine. I'm sure it was best based on wind. But that day that I was sitting there watching him, just sitting there in the slate, here comes this hiker, and it's a very lightly used trail. I mean, the only reason I even found it was after I killed him, I used it to haul him out. And it might even be a game trail. But this guy was coming up, a solo hiker, not a hunter, not scouting, very clearly not hunting, and walks up the whole thing. And it takes him 2 hours to get up to me, and I'm just taking video and pictures of this buck. And he gets up there, and he probably gets 20 yards from me before he sees me. And I startled him because I was in full camo, and he, sitting in the rocks, I blended it pretty good. So he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I explained to him, and he wasn't an anti-hunter. He was just a non-hunter. And we spent 35, 40 minutes talking about the whole process. So, he had, imagine the questions they have, like, well, where are the deer? I'm like, well, they're down there. You just walk by them. Because when he came up that basin, he was 6-7 yards away from those bucks. They never got out of their beds. They just watched him walk. And they wouldn't even, they'd look at him and then they'd look away. They weren't that concerned. But I showed him through the scope, the deer laying there, and he's like, I never would have known. He's like, yeah, there's 15 bucks laying there. Just walk by, and so we talk about the whole process of breaking down a deer and hauling them off the mountain, and what do you do with the meat, and doesn't it go bad, and all these things. And by the time he left, I'm sure he was ready to go buy a small game tag and try hunting. But he was super nice. His name was Chad. And he took his little picture, selfie thing of himself on this mountain peak. And I'm not gonna say how high it was because it would give it away. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of tall peaks, but but anyways, he takes his little pictures, and he's like, "Well, have a good day," and takes off. And he goes right back down the basin. And the deer, again, they'll pick up their head once in a while and look at him, but they're not really paying much attention until he gets to the center of the basin, sits down on a rock, takes off his shoes and changes his socks, has a sandwich, reads a book for a little while, goes number 1, number 2, and then puts his new socks back on. And instead of continuing on the trail, because at this point the deer are watching him, they're not looking away anymore. They're just focused on him. He decides he's going to go walk over towards the cliffs on the other side of the basin, because who knows why, but that's exactly where the deer are at. And he got it wasn't very far, a couple hundred yards towards them, and they all stood up, and then they started coming up towards me. And I'm like, oh shit. And I started gathering all my gear as fast as I can, because I don't want these deer to see me or smell me. And the thermals are great, but I got nowhere to go. Like, it's on the other side is wide open for like a mile. I mean, there's no way going to be for me to hide if they come over the top. And I remember getting all my gear and I was jogging down this slope to get away from them so they wouldn't hear me or see me. And I remember looking back right before I went out of sight, and all of them were just lined up, skylined on the slope, just staring at me. And I remember I would get the range finding binoculars. I remember clicking it up, and it was like 900 and some yards, and they were just locked at me. They were looking right at me, and they just started diving off the other side back towards his side. And I was like, this isn't good. This isn't good. The next day I was back in there, and they were all there except for the 3 biggest bucks, and they were gone. And for the next 8 days, I did basically the same game that I did this past year in Colorado. Was I just searched for him, and I circled that whole mountain, glassed him from every spot I could think of, from up top, from every angle, and he was just gone. The only thing I think of now is that he was actually in the timber, and just the sparse timber where, they don't like bumping their velvet on it, and they will not spend time on it if they don't have to. But I think those 3 older ones they knew after seeing two people like that come at him, one come at him and then they flee to their escape route, and then there's somebody right in front of them. I think that was too much for him. And I had met a guy. I had made like a little cocoon in some willows on the side of a hill that blocks the sun, as I was just glassing the hillside where they were at. All the other bucks except for them, just seeing that morning if he came back, and this other hunter comes up. And it was the first hunter I'd seen, and we ended up spending 6 hours sitting there talking. And there was a buck up on the hill that would push 190, and I told him, I said, I'm not gonna try to kill him. And he's, if you want to do it, but I had told him the whole story. Like, I was completely honest from front. Like, there's one buck in here I want to kill. Told him the whole story of everything I just told you. He's like, I'm not going up there and screwing that up for him. He's going to come back and you'll kill him. And that guy, so what I did then was tell him where all the other bucks I had found in the unit were, that I wasn't going to kill. And the bucks, it was a bunch of like 170, 180 bucks in that unit where the helicopter spooked those elk. And I sent him in there, and he got a shot, I think, a couple days later, but I do not think he ended up killing one. But anyways, he didn't go up there just because he knew that I was waiting on that buck.
That's awesome.
It was. He's a good dude. Still message with him once in a while now. So fast forward, I think it was the 5th day of the season. It was actually the day that he came out of that guy I was just talking about. He came out of the area where I had sent him and told me how he did. And I was back at camp getting cleaned up, getting some real food at my base camp, and I was telling him the story and of what I'd seen and what I hadn't seen, more importantly. And I literally, while he was there, like, he walked back to his truck, and while he was there, I picked up on a little snow, because I had my glass and stuff set up there. I could still see one side of the mountain. I glassed up a little speck on a snow patch that was left over from the year before. And those pictures are on my Instagram of that buck. But he had to have been 5 miles away. I had the big swirl zoomed in all the way, and I had the iPhone digitally zoomed out all the way, so it's real grainy and stuff, but I could tell it was him, and I had found him. And I think he was just working his way back up there from the timber. Because I had looked in those spots, and he was not there. So that next morning, I was up there at daylight, and I shouldn't say that, because you can't get up above them at daylight because you just never know where they're going to be. So I was in a spot where I could see him. And saw that I could make it. They were, at least were not in a spot where I could make it to the top. On the way up there, the weather rolled in, the fog rolled in. It was just horrible, and I had to take shelter. But when that broke, and I snuck up to the top, there he was. And I snuck down as best I could around a bunch of boulders to get to him, but he was just surrounded with all those little bucks and other big bucks too. And I got within 100 yards and was just waiting behind some boulders for him to hopefully feed my way, because I couldn't move any further. There was little forkies and stuff that were within 30 yards of me. And one of those suckers just got up for whatever reason, just a little hungry, and fed his way over to me and almost stepped on me. And when he realized what I was, just came unglued, ran back through the herd. They all jumped up like they don't know what's going on. But he's just like, trouble. Yeah. We gotta go. But those old bucks are looking at him like, dude, just chill out. So they all ran off like 200 yards, and they're standing, and now they're up on the side of the hill. So now I'm below them, and I'm pinned down, and it's half hour from dark. I'm like, this isn't good. I gotta get out of here somehow. And I just decided I'm gonna play like Chad, the hiker. And I literally got all my stuff up, and in one motion stood up behind that boulder and just started walking at a fast pace right down the middle of the basin. And not a single one of those deer left. They all just stood there and watched me walk 500 yards. I was only 250 yards probably from them, and I walked all the way down into the timber and out. And I thought, I don't know if he's going to be there in the morning, but that's a good start, because he did not spook. And next morning, got up there again, did the same routine, basically finding my time to get up above them. And I didn't even know if they were in there yet, just a chance to be able to see in there. And I couldn't pick them up right away. And another storm rolled in. I found every other deer but him. I'm like, here we go again. This is great. And I hide from the rain and the snow. As soon as it breaks, peek back out, and he's just magically there. and he's not with them. And this was the key. They are all down in the willows now, and he's up in the rocks, probably 200 or 300 yards above them, and he's feeding away from them. And as soon as I saw this, I'm packing my gear back up in my bag, and I'm like, I got to be ready to go. And he laid down right in the middle of the basin behind just a volleyball, a couple volleyball, beach ball size rocks, and it's tiny. Like there's no shade from the sun here. As soon as it comes over the hill, he's going to probably get up and join them. So I've got a limited amount of time now to get in range. He's about 750 yards away from me, and it's like really steep, and then it flattens out, and then I actually comes back up, and I got to then go through boulders to get to him. That's kind of undulating terrain, but there's nothing in between us. So that first like 500 yards where I'm going straight down, all he had to do was turn around 180, and he's just looking right at me. And I just got right behind his back of his head, basically, and just worked my way down as quietly as I could. All the other deer were laying down in the willows, completely hidden. So that, wasn't worried about them at all. And it worked. I got to the bottom, and as soon as I got to the bottom, I dropped my pack. At this point, I'm out of sight, and then I just had to weave through the boulders and come over to the top. And really, once I got to the bottom of that, it was done. That was all the hard work. It was super easy to get up, sneak up over. It was soft grass. It was big boulders. Once you're in those big boulders, you can use those to your advantage pretty easy. And I got to 45 yards and just waited, and he stood up, and that was it.
No way. So how did you know exactly where he was? Like when you were coming, that was 750 yards is quite a ways away. As far as like when you were coming up, did you know that you were going to be right on top of him? Or
yeah, I've been in that basin for 2 weeks, so I know. You spend enough time up there. Plus, you've heard guys talk about taking pictures of something so that you have it on your phone. When you're digiscoping from your glassing spots, and you get over there because stuff always looks different over there. Also, what I'll do too is get your Onyx out or your base maps, whichever one you want. Zoom right in, find that boulder he's next to, because it's easy. When you just look at, you'll be able to see there's those same big rocks with those same cliffs. Make a waypoint exactly where that buck's at, and to the rock. And it'll more often than not, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I gotta go up, gain a little bit of elevation or whatever. But yeah, no, it's good.
That's awesome. And yeah, that buck is incredible. I think I still have it pulled up on one of my tabs on my computer here. That's just looks like big cliffs up behind him there that goes up to the top, like just so awesome.
Yeah, no, he's my best. It'd be the buck this year that I got blown out in Colorado. He still wouldn't have beat him, but he would have been close. I put him about 205.
Really? What did this one end up being?
211.
Really? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And do you plan on, well, I'm sure you do, but do you have any tags yet as far as for this year?
I don't have a single tag. I didn't even draw the stuff that I always kind of lean on as my backup plans, like a Montana General Combo or anything. I have not drawn a single thing yet. So, I always have some, I shouldn't say that because I always had the General Combo to lean on, but yeah, I'm hoping this year that I'll be in Utah, hunting the general deer. I'm always hoping I'll draw some other stuff there, but the general deer I should draw, but I also should have drawn last year, but it jumped a point. So hopefully it doesn't jump another point. And that will be my early season deer this year. I will not be in Colorado for the early season.
Really?
It'll be the first time in almost a decade that I will not be in Colorado's high country. So I'll be up there, but I'll be hunting elk. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you burning some points or?
No, I am actually going to hunt the Eastern Plains. I got invited. Yeah, I got invited to something I can't refuse, and it's going to be something new for me. So I guess I'll go ahead and say it was similar to the thing I was saying about it's going to be on rock slide, but a friend of mine, Blake Hunter, and I are going to be filming a couple of hunts, both similar to the style like what I've been doing in Kansas with the spot and stock and the spot and decoy rut hunting with archery. So we're going to do the same thing in Eastern Colorado and Kansas. And we've got a videographer, David DeAustin from Farrell, is going to film it, and we're going to put it up on rock slide and got some cool sponsors. So it's something I've been saying no to for a long, long time. And I've been saying no to videographers, and the best videographers in the hunting industry, I think. I've been asked by, and I've said no, just because it's like just more things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
These hunts in Kansas and the Eastern Plains, when they're in the rut with that decoy, is, I think, made for filming. So it's those deer at that time you are so gullible, and it is so cool that the film I think we're gonna get. I mean, if I'd had a camera with me the last 10 years hunting there with the decoy and the rattling and the calling, it'd be some of the most amazing footage I've ever seen, but I've never had a camera.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't change, but no, my high country hunt this year will be in Utah.
Okay.
And hopefully, I can pick up something else along the way too in another state, but I'm leaning on Utah. Gotcha.
Well, cool. And well, Tony, I think if you're up for it, I'll probably have to have you on again too, to talk about whitetails. I'm intrigued by that as well. But I just wanted to focus on the high country type stuff here. It's difficult to cover it all, but I really appreciate you coming on here and talking to me tonight.
No problem. Anytime you want to talk, I'm always game to talk deer, elk, or even gear or anything.
Awesome. So where can people find, you mentioned your Instagram a few different times here. What's your handle there?
Just my name, Tony, the underscore, and then Trietch, spelled funny, Trietch. And I'm on Facebook too, but it's, everything, basically the only thing that goes there is from Instagram.
Yeah.
And then Rockslide. And I think I've still got 1 or 2 articles that are coming out in magazines here shortly, but you never really know when those are going to pop. But yeah. And you can always get a hold of me on Rockslide too. So
cool. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.